Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have Tuesday, June 24th, and a poll that just came out yesterday shows a very close race in the New York City mayoral Democratic primary where Zohran Mamdani has officially caught Andrew Cuomo in the ranked choice final round of voting. In a new poll that was released by Emerson College and in coordination with Pix 11 and The Hill, found that the New York City Democratic mayoral primary has former Governor Andrew Cuomo leading with 35%, followed closely by Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani at 32%, Comptroller Brad Lander at 13%, City Council Speaker Adrian Adams at 8%, Scott Stringer at 3%, and 4% of voters remain undecided ahead of Tuesday's election. Since last month's poll conducted by Emerson, Mamdani has gained 10 points on the initial ballot test, rising from 22% up to 32%, while Cuomo gained only 1 point from 34 to 35. So this is consistent with a lot of other polls that we've seen where Mamdani's support has been rapidly rising going into the final days and now final hours of the campaign. The survey allowed voters to rank up to 5 candidates in order of preference. The ranked choice voting simulation over 8 rounds ends with Mamdani at 52% and Cuomo at 48%. A quote from the poll's conductor of the poll: over 5 months, Mamdani's support has surged from 1% to 32%, while Cuomo finishes near where he began, said Spencer Kimball, executive director of Emerson College Polling. In the ranked choice simulation, Mamdani gains 18 points compared to Cuomo's 12, putting him ahead in the final round for the first time in an Emerson poll, and I believe for the first time in most polls that have been conducted so far. Voters who have already cast their ballots during the New York City early voting period break for Mamdani, who holds a 10-point lead over Cuomo, 41 to 31%. In contrast, among those who plan to vote on Election Day or have not yet voted at the time of the survey, Cuomo leads over them with 36%, followed by Mamdani at 31%. The first round of ranked choice voting simulation includes 800 voters with a margin of error of 3.4%. The final round includes 729 with a margin of error of 3.6%. So this race is right around that margin of error threshold. In the final round of things, you can make the argument that, or you could argue that Zohran Mamdani's lead is slightly outside of it, but it is very close. Undecided voters are excluded from the ranked choice simulation. In the final round of ranked choice voting, several demographic trends emerge. It says that voters under 50 break for Mamdani by a 2 to 1 margin, while Cuomo leads among those aged 50 to 59 and voters 60 and over. It shows that Hispanic voters support Cuomo 60 to 40 and black voters favor Cuomo 62 to 38. Mamdani leads among white voters 61 to 39 and Asian voters 79 to 21. Cuomo leads over Mamdani among voters with a 4-year college degree, 61 to 39, while Mamdani leads Cuomo among college-educated voters, 62 to 38. Men support Mamdani 56 to 44, while women lean towards Cuomo 52 to 48. And then it also goes over the methodology of the poll as well. This is very big because right now when you look at all the polls that have been done on this race, Cuomo leading at +3 on the first choice or in the first round of voting is one of the closer polls that we've seen thus far, and only a day or two out from Election Day shows this race is going to be very close. But the final round, having Mamdani winning at +4, is the first poll we've seen to have Mamdani defeating Andrew Cuomo in the final poll. And again, this is happening just before Election Day. I don't have it in this video, but I did see a report that a YouGov poll was coming out also that shows Andrew Cuomo leading over Zohran Mamdani, so it's possible that come Election Day, it ends up happening, Cuomo holds on, or Mamdani does end up winning. This poll was onto something. But the trend has been very clear here that Zohran Mamdani has been gaining a lot of momentum in this race going into the final weeks and now the final days and the final hours, where Zohran Mamdani, depending on voter turnout, may have enough support to end up eking out a very narrow victory in the final round of ranked choice voting. But again, we're going to have to wait and see how this all goes because this is going to be very close. The polling shows it's going to be close. For a while, it looked like Andrew Cuomo had about a 10-point lead in the final round, but this is the first non-affiliated poll that shows Mamdani leading, and on the first round of things, shows Cuomo leading by under about 10 points. So this is certainly going to be very close, and we're going to have to wait and see how this all unfolds. Do I think this poll is the accurate poll or an outlier? I honestly think it's really tough to say. because Cuomo getting about 36% support in the first round, Mamdani getting 34%, it's not really too much of a difference from what we've seen in some of the other polls that have been done so far, other than the fact Mamdani gets up to about 34% and Cuomo's only at 36%. This is one of the lower numbers we've seen Cuomo have in any of these polls done so far. The other candidates like Brad Lander at 13 and Adrian Adams at 8 certainly makes a lot of sense. The main wild card that I'm watching for in this race is that 13% for Brad Lander, because Brad Lander and Zohran Mamdani have an agreement in place where they co-endorse each other, so whichever candidate ends up being one of the final two against Cuomo have vowed to support them in trying to stop Andrew Cuomo from being the Democratic nominee. So I would bet a lot of that 13% are going to go for Mamdani. The question is, will enough of the other candidates' support going to Andrew Cuomo be enough to keep Cuomo from winning, or will he be able to win the primary? It's going to be very interesting to watch for. Again, it'll be happening tonight around, I believe, 9 p.m. The polls close in New York, and there has been a good amount of early voting done, so we should get some initial results as well. I'm not sure it's going to be all done today. I think it's possible this may even go on for a week with the ranked choice voting process. I don't think it's going to get done in the first ballot, but again, stay tuned as I'll be doing more videos updating on that front. But this poll is very close as it factors in. Again, it's the only poll that shows Mamdani leading, and we saw a lot of turbulence in this race in the last few hours with a lot of political markets like PredictIt and Polymarket saying that Zohran Mamdani is now above of Andrew Cuomo. It's gone back and forth a lot throughout the day. Last time I checked, it was around Cuomo plus, I want to say, about 15 points or so. So it's certainly gone back and forth, but the momentum for Zohran Mamdani is certainly happening here. And coming into the final hours for this race, it really could not be closer. Just to give you an idea again of what we're looking at here, of all the candidates who are running: Adrian Adams, Selma Bartholomew, Michael Blake, Andrew Cuomo, Brad Lander, Zohran Mamdani, Zelnor Myrie, Paperboy Prince, Jessica Ramos, and Scott Stringer, and Whitney Tulson are all on the New York City Democratic mayor primary ballot. They're facing off to be the Democratic nominee. They'll be facing off against Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee, in November, and two independents who are running as well. The current incumbent mayor, Eric Adams, is now running as an independent, and Jim Waldron, an antitrust government law attorney. So this primary has been very competitive, but it is looking like we're going to start to get a very clear picture in the next few days or so who will be the Democratic nominee. And in New York City, one of the most Democratic areas in the United States, it is more likely than not going to be that Democrat will probably become the next mayor of New York City. But in the final hours of this primary, it's getting very close. It's going to be very competitive, and I can't wait to see how this all goes down. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you did. Also, make sure to check out, I made an election night prediction for this race, going full in depth of all the ranked choice voting. Last night came out around 5 p.m., so make sure to check that out on my channel as well, as that does a very good in-depth look at how I think this race is going to go down. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today we have some news out of the state of California, where former Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, has given a little bit of insight into what she may be doing on the 2026 governor's race. So it begins by saying that Kamala Harris is leaning toward entering the California gubernatorial race, according to sources familiar with the former vice president's thinking. While the sources caution that Harris has not made a final decision yet, it is still considering all her options. They say she has made it clear that she is not done with public service and is giving the race strong consideration. Those who have spoken to Harris about the possibility of entering the race say it has given her a renewed sense of excitement and, as one source put it, a glimmer in her eyes. She has a lot of people in her ear telling her that it makes the most sense and she can do the most good, said one source who has spoken to Harris about a potential run. But another source close to Harris pushed back on the idea that she is inclined to enter the contest. The source said the topic of the gubernatorial race is dominating many of the conversations she is having simply because of the fast approaching 2026 matchup. Either way, the sources say Harris is sticking to a self-imposed end-of-summer deadline in deciding whether to wade into the already crowded governor's race, where the contest includes former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa and former California Attorney General Xavier Becerra, who is also a member of the Biden administration as Secretary of Health and Human Services. The former vice president is planning to take some time off in July, when sources say she hopes to further reflect on the next step in her political career. Harris's office did not comment for this story. In recent weeks, Harris has been participating in a string of conversations about the political climate in the state and the issues on the minds of Californians. She has been particularly interested in issues facing younger voters and has been holding lengthy discussions about the future of artificial intelligence. Harris has kept a pretty low profile in recent months after a devastating loss in the 2024 presidential election, a race she thought she could win. While California has been in the headlines for a rash of news events, including the protesters over the ICE raids in Los Angeles earlier in the month and the wildfires that ravaged major swaths of the state in January, the extent of Harris's public involvement has been posted on social platform X. Harris said, quote, "Los Angeles is my home." She wrote in a statement earlier this month on the protest, "And like so many Americans, I'm appalled at what we are witnessing on the streets of our city. Deploying the National Guard is a dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos." In addition to the recent ICE raids in Southern California and across our nation, it is part of the Trump administration's cruel, calculated agenda to spread panic and division. Those close to the former vice president say she has been appalled by the Trump administration's bold moves, like deploying the National Guard. Harris has told confidence that she feels the president is governing by loyalty and retribution, and that such actions will propel her to re-enter public service. In a very big way that she could do that would be running for governor of her home state where these events were taking place. This moment almost requires her to do it, one source close to Harris said. At the same time, if she chooses to enter the race, her confidants know she will have to contend with looming narratives about whether she helped conceal former President Biden's decline, something Republicans continue to press her on. And even one of her Democratic would-be opponents, Villaraigosa, has made it a talking point, saying, quote, "Voters deserve to know the truth. What did Kamala Harris and Xavier Becerra know? When did they know it? And most importantly, why didn't either of them speak out?" This cover-up directly led to a second Donald Trump term, Villaraigosa wrote in a post on X last month. Against the backdrop of these questions, there's a thought among some Democrats that a run for governor would be a consolation prize, with Harris having been close to winning the presidency less than a year ago. Her confidants cringe at that sentiment, and they say Harris brushes off such commentary. A decision by Harris to run for governor would be significant, political observers say, because it would take a 2028 presidential run likely off the table. I don't think she could, with a straight face, run for governor in 2026 without making an absolute pledge that she would not run for president in 2028, said Gary South, a California-based Democratic strategist. An Emerson College poll in April revealed that 50% of Democratic voters in California would support Harris in a gubernatorial run. A separate poll from Politico and UC Berkeley, released in April, found 33% of Democratic voters in California would be joyful about a Harris bid. 41% would be, quote, "mostly excited." Though those polls show she would lead she'd be the clear frontrunner in the race, some Democrats say they don't think that's enough for her to maintain a clear field. She would start out, at least initially, as the frontrunner, there's no doubt about it, because she has 100% name ID in the state of California. I think there's a real mixed feelings about her among California Democrats, and I think those mixed feelings would grow if she actually got into the race, said South. She doesn't come into this as an 800-pound gorilla, he added, even as some close to her say she's leaning toward running. Some former aides and longtime observers in the state say they doubt Harris will run for governor because she has been, as one former aide put it, absent from the events that have dominated the state. In the face of this month's protests in Los Angeles, for example, Harris and the Hamptons attending the wedding of Huma Abedin and Alex Soros, two big names from the Democratic circles. In April, Harris spoke at a gala before hundreds of donors in San Francisco and made no mention of state issues or political affairs. She's the kind of person that if she's going to do something, she's very serious about it, focused on it, said Elizabeth Ashford, a California-based communications advisor who served as Harris's chief of staff when she was the state's attorney general. It just seems to me that this would be a summer of reintroducing herself as a Californian to Californians if that were really front of mind. In the months since she left office, Harris has made the most out of her public appearances outside of California. Last month, the former vice president spoke at a closed-room real estate conference in Australia, following a surprise Met Gala appearance in New York. She was in Las Vegas for a conference on AI in March and engaged with students at a Maryland Community College in December. Her loss of the presidency in November raises questions for some California Democrats about how she will address the issue they say Democratic voters in the state most care about. I think California Democrats right now want somebody who's going to get in Trump's face, said South, the California-based Democratic strategist. But I'm not sure that someone who just lost pretty badly to Donald Trump can posit themselves as the best counter against Donald Trump if they were to be governor of California. That is a very interesting point to close the article off as well. So for this governor's race right now, this is obviously an open race as Gavin Newsom is term limited and cannot be running again. A whole number of Democrats are running, and even a few of them have already expressed interest that if Harris were to jump in the race, they would drop out of the race. For instance, the Lieutenant Governor of California, Eleni Kounalakis, and former U.S. Representative Katie Porter both have stated if Harris joins the race, they will be getting out of the race. Still, lots of Democrats and Republicans are vying for this election, but when you look at it, it's pretty clear in the early hypothetical polling that if Kamala Harris were to run, she starts out as the clear Democratic favorite to be the nominee for the Democrats. California elects its primary for Democrats and Republicans all on one ballot, and the top two vote getters advance to the general election. So it's not necessarily going to be that there has to be a Republican and a Democrat. It is possible that two Democrats can end up facing off if they get enough votes, but that's all a conversation for a later day. But you could bet with almost 100% certainty if Harris were to enter this race, she would likely be one of the Democrats advancing to the general election. Who the Republicans put up or if other Democrats get in will have to be discussed later on. But Harris, if she joins this race, is the clear frontrunner on this side of things. And as the article mentioned, it would also likely take her out of the running for 2028, where in the early polling that's been done so far, in most polls, Harris has actually been leading over the Democratic field. She is still the first place candidate in most instances. Only the Atlas Intel polls have shown Harris not in first place anymore. Every other poll has continued to have Harris in the lead. But as I mentioned a few months ago, following the 2024 election, name recognition is a huge reason why. After the presidential election, the next presidential election, oftentimes the candidate that was just the nominee for the party starts out as the clear favorite for the next election. And that's because that's the person that most Democratic or Republican voters in the primaries have heard of. So Harris should be leading at this point in time. Will it translate into 2026 and 2027? That remains to be seen. But as for California and its election history, without no mistake, this is going to be a safe Democratic state. I voted for Gavin Newsom by 18.4% in 2022's governor's race. In 2018, I voted for Newsom by 23.9%. So this is fully expected to be a safe Democratic state for 2026. But the prospect of Kamala Harris being the Democratic nominee certainly adds a very important national sort of spotlight on this race, more than it otherwise would be, due to the fact that the former vice president would be the Democratic nominee. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going over a news report that President Trump has launched a MAGA PAC, an effort to oust Republican Thomas Massie from Congress in 2026. So President Trump's political operation has launched an aggressive effort to unseat Kentucky Representative Thomas Massie, its first such effort to defeat a sitting Republican incumbent, according to Axios. So this matters because by going after Massie, Trump's team is looking to put wayward Republicans on notice that they're ready to play hardball. Massie recently attacked Trump over his strike on Iran, saying on X that, quote, it was not constitutional, prompting the president to fire back on social media on Truth Social that the congressman is, quote, not MAGA. President Trump called Massie a weak and ineffective and disrespectful to our great military and all they stand for. Massie was one of two House Republicans to vote against Trump's big beautiful bill last month, leading Trump to declare that he should be, quote, voted out of office. Trump's $500 million political apparatus is the most powerful, well-funded force in American politics, and it gives Trump a weapon with which to target any lawmaker who crosses him. Trump's team has launched Kentucky MAGA, a super PAC devoted to defeating Massie in the May 2026 primary. The organization will be run by Trump's senior political advisors, Tony Fabricio and Chris LaCivita, who are often helping President Trump in his campaign and on several other campaigns of Trump candidates and Trump surrogates as well. LaCivita said the PAC would spend whatever it takes to defeat Massie. Plans for taking on Massie were in the works before the congressman decided to call Trump's attack on Iran unconstitutional, a Trump aide said. So this wasn't just a spur-in-the-moment thing. This is something the Trump campaign and the Trump team has been looking at for a while. Trump's operation has been talking with potential Republican challengers to Massie for a little bit now. Aides say the goal is to rally around one Massie opponent so that multiple rivals don't splinter support in the vote. So try to make it a 1v1 race. They have a better chance of beating Massie that way is their thought process. The Trump team earlier this month quietly commissioned a survey gauging Massie's support in his conservative central Kentucky district and found that the congressman would be vulnerable to a Trump-backed primary challenge. The survey, which was conducted by Trump pollster John McLaughlin, found that 52% would support a Trump-endorsed candidate and 23% support Massie. 87% approved of President Trump compared to 52% who approved of Massie, according to the poll, a copy of which was obtained by Axios. 74% of respondents said they were supporting of President Trump's Big Beautiful Bill. But Massie, who was first elected in 2012, easily survived primary challengers in the last 3 cycles. His advisors argue that his libertarian-minded independent streak endears him to voters. Massie's longtime opposition to President Trump's working family tax cuts and really anything to do with President Trump is coming to an end, said La Savita in a statement. Thomas Little Boy Massie will be fired, quote unquote. Massie told Axios that any serious person considering running should spend money on an independent poll before letting swampy consultants take them for an embarrassing ride. Massie and Trump's contentious relationship dates back all the way to Trump's first term as well. In 2020, Massie opposed Trump's COVID relief package, leading the president to call for the congressman to be, quote, thrown out of the Republican Party. The congressman was one of only 6 House Republicans to endorse Florida Governor Ron DeSantis over Trump in last year's 2024 GOP presidential primary. Massie opposed a Trump-backed government spending bill this spring. Trump called the congressman, quote, a grandstander. So there's certainly some bad blood between Trump and Massie that have gone back a long time as well. But this is very interesting because this district right here, Kentucky's 4th district, which Thomas Massie represents, he's represented it for a while, since 2012. And the district, according to the Cook PVI here, this 4th district is a very heavily Republican district. 2025's Cook Political Voting Index has it at Republican plus 18. That is a safe Republican district that if that district is going to the Democrats, something would have really, really had to gone wrong for the Republicans. So essentially, there's no possibility of the Democrats having a chance at winning this race. But that doesn't mean Massie cannot potentially lose a Republican primary. Just to show you some of the recent general election results here, it voted Massie in 2024. He didn't even have a Democratic opponent in the general election. So he won easily by 100% of the vote in 2024. In 2022, there was a Democratic opponent, but again, a Republican plus 18 district, Massie still won by 34 points against the Democrat. In 2020, Massie won by 34.2%. 2018, he won by 27.7%. 2016, 42.6%. 2014, 35.5%. And 2012, the first time he was elected, 27.2%. Before that, the district, which was at the time also a part of Kentucky 4, was a little bit drawn differently here. The Republican before him won by 39 points. So this is not a district that's going to be competitive at the general election level. And I know if any Democratic supporters or any Democrats are listening, you would hear this and say, well, can they make this race competitive? The numbers on the recent elections really don't suggest this race is going to be all that close. Even if Thomas Massie and whoever President Trump gets to run ends up having a messy Republican primary, there's really not a situation here that this race is going to be in play of flipping to the Democrats in 2026. I'm sure the Democrats would love for that to happen, but there's really not a path for that to happen in 2026. Now, so far, this district, which, as I mentioned, is located in the northeastern part of the state along the Ohio River, includes the suburbs of Cincinnati and eastern suburbs of Louisville. And this district, which, as I mentioned, Thomas Massie was reelected unopposed in 2024. On March 11th, President Trump also condemned Massie for voting against the full-year continuation appropriations and extensions act of 2025 and remarked the great people of Kentucky are going to be watching a very interesting primary in the not-too-distant future. In June 2025, this is the latest news, Trump called for a primary challenge against Massie, specifically for opposing the United States strikes on Iran. Right now, only one other candidate in the race, Nikki Lee Ethington, a registered nurse, but in all likelihood, that's not going to be the main Republican to take on Massie. The biggest name that's been mentioned so far is Kimberly Poore Mosier, a state representative from the 64th district. She's the only potential candidate that is listed right now. State Senator Aaron Reed from the 7th district has already ruled out a run in this race. If President Trump were to convince him to run, maybe he could change his mind, but he has already thus far ruled out a potential run. But look, even with President Trump's support, unseating a U.S. representative is going to be a very difficult task due to the fact that Thomas Massie has a lot of name recognition, and President Trump going after him may even give him more name recognition, but he certainly also has a decent amount of cash on hand with $1.2 million, $1.2.5 million on hand. But having President Trump and the Trump PAC behind him can make this certainly a lot more interesting. The Trump-endorsed Republican, as that poll mentioned, was 52-23, so it could end up looking like the Texas Senate race with Ken Paxton versus John Cornyn, where if enough support is thrown behind the candidate against Massie, that would certainly give them the advantage. The problem, though, for that candidate is they're going to have to try and find a way to convey to voters that President Trump endorsed them. and that will be tough against Thomas Massie, who's going to be, without a doubt, the most well-known figure in that race. Is it impossible? No. Is it possible? Absolutely. But getting their name out there the same level as a Massie's without Trump going to that district and campaigning for them is going to be very tough, which I would bet President Trump will probably do, will be going to that district and doing a rally for that Republican to try and help them out. The Democrats do have 3 Democrats running: Jesse Brewer, Bernice Dean, and Elizabeth Mason Hill. But again, as I mentioned, given how overwhelmingly Republican this district is, all political rankings have this race listed as solid Republican, and I certainly have it listed as Republican in my own rankings as well. But I thought this was very interesting. Make sure to leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts about this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in a future video.